The woman who entered the courtroom before the hearing began was immediately seated in the witness section due to her simple appearance, and no one hesitated to avoid eye contact with her. When they realized that this woman was Dr. Patricia Williams, a retired Supreme Court justice and the person who would be judging that case, they experienced the biggest shock in the courtroom's history. Dr. Patricia Williams left her home in the early morning hours. At 68, she had served 30 years on the Supreme Court and was one of the most respected names in the justice system. However, after retirement, she had dedicated her life to simplicity. This morning, she was going to the city courthouse to oversee a special case. Patricia had expensive clothes in her wardrobe, but she no longer enjoyed wearing them. This morning, she chose a simple blue dress, comfortable shoes, and an old bag inherited from her grandmother. She had put her hair in a simple bun and wore no makeup. When people saw her, they might think she was a retired teacher or housewife. When she arrived at the courthouse building, security guard Michael greeted her. Michael had never seen Patricia before, and the woman's simple appearance gave him the impression of an ordinary citizen. "Hello, ma'am," said Michael in a friendly but somewhat patronizing way. "Which case are you here to observe today?" Patricia smiled. "I'll be following the Johnson case." "Ah, that's an important case," said Michael, "but it's not the kind that elderly ladies like you would understand. There are very complex legal matters involved." Patricia listened patiently. "I understand. Where should I sit?" "Over there in the public section," said Michael, pointing. "And ma'am, please be quiet. Sometimes elderly ladies talk too much." He directed Patricia into the courtroom. The room looked large and magnificent. At the front was the judge's bench. In the middle were the lawyers' tables, and at the back were the rows where the public sat. The room was starting to fill up. In the front sat lawyers in expensive suits. Among them was Mark Harrison, partner of the city's most renowned law firm. When Mark noticed Patricia, he slightly frowned. "What is this woman doing here?" he murmured to his colleague, Sarah. "This case is very important and technical. Ordinary people can't understand it." Sarah also looked at Patricia, probably a relative of one of the parties in the case, but she really looks inappropriate. Meanwhile, the court clerk, Lisa, was walking around the courtroom. When she saw Patricia, she came over to her. "Ma'am," said Lisa in a polite but somewhat condescending tone, "this case is very complex. Maybe you confused it with cases in family court." "No," said Patricia calmly. "I want to follow the Johnson case." "But this case is about constitutional rights and federal jurisdiction," said Lisa impatiently. "There are very technical issues. You'll be bored." Patricia smiled. "Don't worry, I can follow it." Lisa shrugged and walked away. "Elderly people become very stubborn," she muttered. As it approached 9 o'clock, the lawyers were making their final preparations. While Mark Harrison was reviewing his important documents, the opposing counsel, Jennifer Martinez, was also planning her strategy. "This case is the most important case of my career," Mark told his assistant. "I need to know Supreme Court decisions very well, especially the Williams versus State case is very critical." Jennifer was thinking about the same case. "The Williams versus State decision forms the foundation of this case. I wish we could speak with the judge who made that decision." Meanwhile, Patricia was sitting quietly in the back, listening to the lawyers' conversations. Williams versus State case. She remembered it very well. She had written that decision herself 15 years ago. It was 9:15, but the judge hadn't arrived yet. The courtroom was starting to get a bit restless. "The judge is late," said Mark. "Who will be presiding over this case?" Secretary Lisa stood up. "Retired Judge Dr. Patricia Williams will be presiding over the case. She is a very experienced judge who retired from the Supreme Court." Mark's eyes lit up. Patricia Williams. That's a legendary name. The author of the Williams versus State decision. It would be a great honor to work with her. Jennifer was also excited. Just being in the same courtroom as Patricia Williams is a great honor. I wonder what she looks like. Patricia was listening with a smile from the back. It became 9:30, but the judge still hadn't arrived. Court Administrator Robert entered looking worried. "Everyone," he said loudly. "Judge Williams had car trouble and will be a bit late. We'll wait about 15 more minutes." Meanwhile, Patricia stood up and left the courtroom to use the restroom. While walking in the corridor, she encountered Kevin, a young law intern. "Ma'am," said Kevin hurriedly, "this area is closed to the public. You might be in the wrong place." "I was going to the restroom," said Patricia. "Oh, okay," said Kevin. But then please return to the public section. And please be quiet. There's a very important case today." As Patricia went to the restroom, Kevin told his friends, "There's an elderly lady wandering around the courtroom. Ordinary people shouldn't be present at such important cases." When she returned from the restroom, Patricia heard two lawyers talking in the corridor. "I wonder what Patricia Williams is like," one was saying. "She's legendary," said the other. "Very intelligent, very sharp, but she's probably very serious and unapproachable. Judges at this level are usually very cold." Patricia smiled inwardly. It was interesting to hear how people imagined her. When she returned to the courtroom, she noticed that the atmosphere had become even more tense. It was 9:45, and everyone was getting impatient. "This much delay is unprofessional," said Mark irritably. "Maybe she's very old and has health problems," said Sarah. "Supreme Court justices are usually very old." Patricia was sitting in the back, listening to these comments. Despite being 68 years old, she didn't feel old at all, and her health was excellent. At 10 o'clock, Court Administrator Roberts stood up again. "Everyone, we received a message from Judge Williams. The car problem has been resolved. She'll be here in 5 minutes." At that moment, Patricia's cell phone rang. When she answered, she heard her driver, James's voice. "Dr. Williams, I'm so sorry. The car broke down, but I took it to the mechanic. I'm coming to pick you up now." "James," said Patricia in a low voice, "I'm already at the courthouse. I don't need my car." "What? But I didn't come to pick you up." "I came in my own car. Don't worry." When Patricia hung up the phone, the people around her were looking at her strangely. "Ma'am," said Secretary Lisa, "phone conversations are prohibited. Please be careful." "I apologize," said Patricia. At 10:05, Court Administrator Robert made a final announcement. "Judge Williams is here. The hearing will begin. Please rise." The courtroom stood up. Everyone was looking at the judge's door, waiting for Patricia Williams's entrance. Patricia calmly stood up from the back, then slowly began walking toward the judge's door. At first, no one noticed. Then Secretary Lisa saw her. "Ma'am!" Lisa called out in panic. "Where are you going? Please sit down." Patricia didn't stop. She continued walking toward the judge's bench. Mark Harrison was surprised. "What is this woman doing? Where is security?" Security guard Michael came running to Patricia's side. "Ma'am, stop!" he said in a stern voice. "That's a restricted area." Patricia stopped and turned to Michael. She took her ID from her bag. "Dr. Patricia Williams," she said calmly, "the judge presiding over this case." Michael took the ID and examined it. His eyes widened. This can't be possible," he stammered. By this time, the courtroom had become completely silent. Everyone was trying to understand what was happening. Patricia took back her ID and continued walking toward the judge's bench. When she climbed to the bench, she stood up and surveyed the courtroom. "Good morning," she said in a clear and authoritative voice. "I am Dr. Patricia Williams, the judge who will be presiding over this case." The courtroom was in shock. No one could speak. Mark Harrison's mouth was left hanging open. This simple, modest woman was the legendary Judge Patricia Williams. Jennifer Martinez was also frozen. They had looked at one of the Supreme Court's most respected names with the eyes of an elderly lady. Secretary Lisa wanted to sink into the ground from embarrassment. How many times had she been disrespectful to her? Security guard Michael put his hands to his head. He had called a legendary judge "ma'am" and seated her in the public section. Patricia sat down and put on her glasses. She opened the files in her hand and prepared to begin the case. "Mr. Harrison," she said, looking at Mark, "you may present your case." Mark stood up, but his voice was trembling. Your Honor Williams, I'm very sorry." "What are you apologizing for, Mr. Harrison?" asked Patricia calmly. I didn't recognize you. I made inappropriate comments about you." Patricia smiled. "Mr. Harrison, many people in this courtroom didn't recognize me. That's normal, but what I expect from you is to do your job in the best way possible. Present your case." Mark relaxed a bit and began presenting the case, but his mind was still on Patricia's simplicity. During the recess, the courtroom was in chaos. Everyone was talking about Patricia. "Can you believe it?" said Sarah. "Patricia Williams is such a simple woman." "I thought she was old and sick," said intern Kevin shamefully. Secretary Lisa came to Patricia's side. "Your Honor," she said in a trembling voice, "I'm so sorry. I was very disrespectful to you. Patricia looked at her. Lisa, you were trying to do your job, but next time, try to learn who people are before judging them by their appearance. Security guard Michael also came over. Your Honor Williams, he said embarrassedly. Please forgive me. I behaved very disrespectfully toward you. Michael, said Patricia, you're doing the job of protecting this building. That's important, but next time, don't forget to ask for identification. The hearing continued. Patricia showed extraordinary mastery in managing the cases. She listened carefully to both Mark's and Jennifer's arguments, asked sharp questions, and clarified legal contradictions. I've never seen such an experienced judge before, whispered Court Administrator Robert. At the end of the case, Patricia announced her decision. The decision was both legally perfect and protected the rights of both parties. What I saw in this case, said Patricia in her closing remarks, was not just a legal dispute, but also how our prejudices can blind us. She looked at the courtroom. This morning, most of you judged me because of my appearance. This is normal human behavior, but as people working in the justice system, we must always remember that appearances can be deceiving. Mark stood up. Your Honor Williams, today you gave us not just a law lesson, but a life lesson. Thank you. Patricia smiled. Mr. Harrison, you do your job well. Just be a little more open-minded. When the hearing ended, the courtroom gave Patricia a standing ovation. Everyone applauded while standing. As Patricia descended from the bench, Lisa came to her side. Your Honor, said Lisa, why do you dress so simply? I mean, you're such an important person. Patricia stopped. Lisa, clothes don't define a person. I know who I am. What matters is not how others see me, but how I behave. But people don't recognize you. Lisa, said Patricia, laughing, people who know me know who I am, not what I look like. People who don't know me learned a lesson today. As Patricia left the courthouse, she encountered a group of young law students in the corridor. When the students recognized her, they got excited. Your Honor Williams, said one of the students. It's a great honor to see you. I'm a big admirer of yours. Patricia chatted with them and answered their questions. The students were surprised at how humble and approachable she was. She's nothing like we imagine, one student said to his friend. She's so normal, so warm. That evening, the courthouse staff talked about this incident at length. Everyone was impressed by Patricia Williams. She taught me a lot today, said security guard Michael. I will never judge anyone by their appearance again. Lisa had also changed. The most important people can sometimes look the simplest. I'll never forget this. That night, Mark Harrison told his wife at home, Today I learned the most important lesson of my life. True greatness is hidden not in showiness, but in character. Patricia, when she returned home, was able to relax and shake off the day's fatigue. She smiled, looking in the mirror. She knew how people imagined her, cold, unreachable, showy. But the real Patricia Williams was this, simple, modest, but determined about justice. The next day, everyone in the courthouse corridors was talking about Patricia Williams. The story quickly spread throughout the entire justice circle. Did you hear? One lawyer was saying to another, Patricia Williams came so simply that they mistook her for an ordinary citizen. This story is very important, said another. It reminds us of our prejudices. Now, every time Patricia came to that courthouse, everyone greeted her with respect. But this time, the respect came not from her appearance, but from who she was. And Patricia Williams continued to dispense justice with the same simple clothes, the same modest attitude, but now with the truth that everyone knew. The greatest authority is hidden not in showiness, but in justice. Sometimes the greatest lessons come from the most unexpected moments. And sometimes the most powerful people are hidden within those who appear the simplest. If this story opened your mind about the danger of judging by appearances, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs this reminder, and subscribe for more stories that challenge our assumptions about power, authority, and human dignity. Your support helps us continue bringing these important lessons to light.